The VillaNova New York Knicks are building a dynasty that will rule the NBA. And that starts with Jalen Brunson, as his game goes way deeper than just points on a scoreboard. And looking at the full range of ways he creates offense really shows why the Knicks built everything around him. He's not a guy who only scores one way. He can run a pick and roll and pick apart the coverage. He can go isolation and just win a one-on-one battle. He can pull up off the dribble without needing a screen at all. He can drive straight into the paint. He can float little shots over the top of bigger defenders. He can operate out of the short roll area after a screen. He can even back down smaller guards in the post. He can change direction mid-drive to shake a defender loose. He can space out and knock down threes. He draws fouls at a high rate. And late in the clock, when the shot clock is dying and something has to happen, he's the guy creating something out of nothing. That's an incredible number of tools for one player to have in his bag. And it means a defense can't just take away one single thing and think they've solved him. Think about it this way. If a team switches a screen onto him, he just attacks whatever matchup shows up. If they drop their big man back in coverage, he pulls up and shoots right over it. If they blitz him with two defenders, he finds the open man. If they put a smaller defender on him, he uses his strength and footwork to bully his way to the rim. If they put a bigger defender on him, he uses his handle and change of pace to slip right by. There's basically no coverage that fully takes him off the floor as a threat. And that versatility is exactly why a guard his size can still be the #1 option on a championship team. Now here's where his relationship with Karl Anthony Towns becomes such a fascinating piece of the puzzle. Towns can operate away from the basket and knock down threes from deep, and that changes the entire geometry of the court for Brunson. Picture it as two roles working together. Brunson is the downhill ball screen creator, and Towns is the shooting big who can drag a rim protector away from the paint. That forces opposing centers into a brutal decision every single possession. If that big man drops back to protect the rim, Brunson has all the space he needs to operate. If that big man steps up higher to contest, Towns becomes a threat as a screener or a popper for an open three. And if the defense tries switching everything, Brunson just goes right after whichever big man ends up on him. This partnership means Brunson never has to face just one style of coverage over and over again. He's constantly forcing opposing coaches into impossible choices. And it's not just Towns making life easier for him. Look at the rest of that starting lineup. Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Karl Anthony Towns, and Josh Hart all bring something different to the table around him. Those four can defend at a high level, crash the boards, cut through the lane, space the floor, and attack closeouts when the ball swings their way. Because those four are absorbing so many other responsibilities, Brunson gets to pour almost all of his energy into being the primary creator. He doesn't have to be the best rebounder on the roster. He doesn't have to be the best perimeter defender on the roster. He doesn't have to be the guy finishing every transition fast break. His teammates take those jobs off his plate completely, which frees him up to focus on organizing the entire offense every single time down the floor. By the way, if you guys enjoy these deep dives, I'll be posting every day. I genuinely appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks. Anyways, now let's get into the VillaNova connection, because this part of the story is honestly wild when you break down the actual timeline. Brunson, Josh Hart, and Mikal Bridges were all teammates together at VillaNova. They won the 2016 NCAA championship together as college teammates. Then Brunson and Bridges stuck around and won a second NCAA championship together in 2018. Fast forward to today, and all three of them ended up together again, this time wearing Knicks jerseys, and together they won the 2026 NBA championship. According to the NCAA itself, the Knicks became only the second team in history to start three players from the same college in an NBA Finals game. Only the second team ever. That's an absolutely rare piece of basketball history, and Brunson sits right at the center of it. What's interesting is how differently each of those three VillaNova guys function once they hit the NBA level. Brunson is the primary creator and the offensive organizer, the guy touching the ball on almost every trip down the floor. Bridges brings two-way value, handling perimeter defense, while also chipping in shooting and secondary scoring. Hart brings rebounding, hustle defense, energy plays, and some secondary playmaking in transition. Three completely different skill sets, three completely different roles, but Brunson is the one steering the ship. He's been described as the floor general, whose scoring and leadership defined the entire championship run. And honestly, watching how the roles broke down, that description fits perfectly. Something else worth pointing out is just how broad Brunson's decision-making responsibility actually is. It's easy to just look at a scoring average and think that's the whole story. But running an offense at his level means constantly reading situations in real time. He has to know when to attack the rim and when to pull back. He has to know when to pass instead of forcing a shot. He has to decide when to reject a screen completely and go his own way. He has to know when a pull-up jumper is the right read. He has to know when getting into the paint draws enough help to free up a teammate. He has to know when to reset the offense and start over. He has to know when to go specifically to Towns for a bucket. He has to know when a shooter's open on the weak side, and he has to know when it's simply his turn to take over the possession himself. That is an enormous amount of split-second decision-making happening on every single trip down the floor, possession after possession, game after game. That's the actual job of a lead guard running a championship offense, and it's a completely different skill from just being a scorer. Let's talk about his captaincy for a second, because this is a formal distinction, not just something fans decided on their own. Brunson was officially named the 36th captain in Knicks franchise history. Think about that number for a second. 36 captains across the entire history of that organization, and he's the one wearing that title right now. During the exact season they finally broke a 53-year championship drought. That's not a coincidence. The organization put that responsibility directly on him, and he delivered the franchise's first title in over 5 decades while holding that title. And even after all of that success, Brunson's own words tell you everything about his mindset moving forward. Back in August of 2026, he came out and said that winning the championship and winning Finals MVP didn't mean his work was finished. He specifically said there was still more for him to prove, and that the championship wouldn't define him going forward. That's coming directly from him, not some outside assumption about his mentality. For a guy who just authored one of the best individual finals performances in recent memory, that's a pretty telling statement about how he views the future. Now here's a part of the story that often gets overlooked when people talk about roster building, and that's how Brunson's contract fits into the bigger picture strategically. Back in July of 2024, he signed a 4-year extension instead of waiting around for a potentially much larger deal down the road. According to NBA.com, that decision was made specifically to give the front office more financial flexibility moving forward. And that flexibility turned into real results. Because Brunson left money on the table, the front office had the room to retain OG Anunoby and also bring in Mikal Bridges. Those two moves directly shaped the starting lineup that eventually won the championship. So Brunson's fingerprints on this title run go way beyond what he did on the court. His financial decision literally helped construct the roster around him. And what makes that decision even more significant is the timing of it. His extension didn't kick in until after the roster had already started coming together around him. NBA.com specifically connected his extension to the front office's ability to manage the payroll while keeping the pieces they wanted and adding the pieces they needed. So there are really 2 full layers to what Brunson brought to this organization. On the court, he's the offensive engine, driving the whole operation. Off the court, his contract decision opened the door for the front office to build out the roster the way they wanted. Put all of this together, the different scoring tools in his arsenal, the way his game pairs perfectly with Towns spacing the floor, the way his teammates absorb other responsibilities so he can focus purely on creation. The incredible VillaNova history, connecting him with Hart and Bridges across 2 different levels of basketball, the sheer amount of decision-making packed into every possession he plays, his official status as team captain, his own words about still having more to prove, and the financial sacrifice that helped shape the roster around. That's a level of impact that goes far beyond a stat line. Brunson isn't just putting up numbers. He's the connective tissue holding every single piece of that championship roster together. His right-hand man, Josh Hart, isn't chasing scoring titles. And once you dig into his numbers, you'll see exactly why that never mattered for what the Knicks needed from him. He stands 6'5" and weighs 215 pounds, and his game is built around rebounding, passing, and just being everywhere at once. During the 2025-26 season, he averaged 12 points, 7.4 rebounds, and 4.8 assists across 30.2 minutes a night. He shot 50.8% from the field and 41.3% from 3. Those shooting numbers alone should stop anyone from calling him just a hustle guy, because that kind of efficiency from a 6'5" wing is genuinely rare. Let's break down that rebounding number for a second, because 7.4 rebounds a game from a guard is a wild statistic. That's not a power forward number. That's not a center number. That's a backcourt player crashing the glass like he's fighting for his life on every single possession. And his rebounding wasn't just about securing defensive stops either. His offensive rebounding created entire extra possessions for New York. When Brunson or Towns missed a shot Instead of the possession just ending, Hart could track down the ball, kick it back out, and either set up another shot or score it himself. That's a possession that shouldn't have existed, and Hart manufactured it out of nothing, over and over across the season. Now let's talk about his assists, because 4.8 a game is not a small number for a guy who isn't the primary ball handler. That number tells you he's a legitimate secondary playmaker, not someone who just grabs a board and passes it back to Brunson every time. He could push the ball himself, find cutters, hit open shooters, and make drive and kick reads. That takes pressure off Brunson in a massive way, because the offense doesn't completely stall out every time the ball leaves Brunson's hand. Hart can pick up right where Brunson left off and keep the pressure on the defense. During the regular season, Hart also recorded 13 double-doubles and 2 triple-doubles. 13 double-doubles from a guy averaging 12 points a game tells you his production was spread out across multiple categories instead of stacking up in one column. He also chipped in 1 point, 1 steals a game, which meant his activity on the defensive end could translate directly into fast break opportunities without needing Brunson to manufacture something in the half court. His three-point shooting deserves its own moment here, because 41.3% is an elite number league-wide, not just solid for a role player. That number completely changes how a defense has to guard him. Teams can't just leave him standing in the corner and dare him to shoot anymore. If they sag off him to load up on Brunson or Towns, Hart makes them pay from deep. That shooting percentage forces defenses to respect the entire floor, which opens up even more room for everybody else. Now here's where things get really interesting, because his finals performance actually shifted the entire shape of his stat line. Across the finals against San Antonio, Hart averaged 7.6 points, 9.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and 1.4 steals, while playing 30.4 minutes a night and shooting 40% from 3. Notice what happened there. His scoring dropped compared to the regular season, but his rebounding jumped up close to 10 boards a game. That's exactly what you want to see from a player who understands the moment. When the stakes went up, he leaned even harder into the parts of his game that impact winning the most. Game 1 of the finals might be the single best illustration of what Hart actually brings to a basketball game. He scored just 3 points on 1 for 5 shooting, including 0 for 3 from 3. On paper, that looks like a rough shooting night, but look at everything else. 15 rebounds, 6 assists, 4 steals, 1 block. All of that in only 27 minutes. And during his time on the floor, the Knicks outscored San Antonio by 22 points. 22 points in his minutes alone, despite him barely scoring. That single game tells you everything about why box score scoring alone completely misses what he does for that team. And those 15 rebounds in Game 1 weren't just a nice individual number either. That was reported as the most rebounds by a backcourt player in a finals game since at least 1968, putting him in the same conversation as 15 rebound finals performances from Kobe Bryant and Magic Johnson. Think about that for a second. A modern-day Knicks guard matching rebounding totals that go back to 2 of the greatest backcourt players in the history of the sport. That's not a small accomplishment. That's a historically rare statistical line. He also wasn't limited to that connector role every single night. In Game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals against Cleveland, Hart scored 26 points on 10 for 21 shooting, including 5 for 11 from 3. He added 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals in that same game. So while his primary job is filling gaps and doing the dirty work, he clearly has the scoring gear available whenever a matchup calls for it. That gives New York a layer of unpredictability that opposing coaches have to account for. Then in the championship-clinching Game 5, Hart played 39 minutes and put up 13 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 assists while shooting 3 for 6 from 3. Another double-double in the exact game that sealed the title. That's not a guy fading into the background when the pressure is at its highest point of the entire season. That's a guy delivering a complete performance on the biggest stage possible. Let's shift over to his defensive impact for a second, because the numbers back up his reputation there too. During Game 1 specifically, reports noted he had 2 screen assists, 3 deflections, 7 contested shots, and an offensive loose ball recovery. And he helped hold Stephon Castle to 1 for 3 shooting while guarding him. That's not one category of impact. That's stacking up multiple different defensive contributions inside a single game on top of everything he was already doing on the glass and as a passer. Now think about his size and how that plays into his versatility on both ends. At 6'5" and 215 pounds, he can guard bigger wings than a typical guard his size usually can, while still bringing guard-level ball skills on offense. That means opposing teams can't easily find a matchup to exploit against him. Put a bigger player on him, and he uses his quickness and ball handling. Put a smaller player on him, and he uses his strength and physicality to just overpower them. His steal numbers also carried over into the postseason, climbing from 1.1 a game in the regular season up to 1.4 a game in the finals. That increase matters because steals translate directly into instant offense. He doesn't need to wait around for a half-court set to develop when he can just take the ball away and go. Now, about his age and what that means going forward. Hart is 31 years old, entering the 2026-27 season. As of August 2026, he became eligible for a contract extension beginning with the 2027-28 season, with that eligibility window opening on August 10th of 2026. His current contract includes roughly $21 million for the 2026-27 season, followed by a roughly $22 million team option for 2027-28. As of right now, there's no completed extension in place, so his long-term future with the organization remains an open question heading into this stretch of the offseason. That financial picture matters a lot when you zoom out and look at the entire roster. Brunson already signed a below-market extension specifically to give the front office more room to operate. Now the organization is staring down future decisions involving Towns, Anunoby, Bridges, Hart, and McBride, all at the same time, while working within the NBA's second apron restrictions that make keeping an expensive roster together increasingly difficult. Hart himself has previously said he hopes to keep playing for roughly another 5 years and wants to keep winning, but again, as of August 2026, nothing is finalized on paper. Now let's circle back to the VillaNova piece of this story, because Hart's championship history there runs deep. He, Brunson, and Bridges were all teammates at VillaNova, and together, they won the 2016 NCAA championship. Years later, all three ended up together again in New York, and this time, they won the 2026 NBA championship as teammates. That connects two different championship runs, a full decade apart, tied together by the same three players. Hart has specifically credited former VillaNova coach Jay Wright with instilling the mindset of making winning plays that don't always show up in a stat sheet. And that mentality clearly followed him straight into his NBA career. Put every piece of this together: 12 points, 7.4 rebounds, 4.8 assists, 1.1 steals, 50.8% shooting from the field, and 41.3% from three during the regular season, 13 double-doubles, and 2 triple-doubles across that same stretch. Then in the finals, 7.6 points, 9.8 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 1.4 steals, and 40% shooting from three, capped off by a 15 rebound, 6 assist, 4 steal performance in Game 1, and a 13-point, 11 rebound, double-double in the closeout game. That's an incredibly complete statistical resume for a player whose job was never about chasing a scoring title in the first place. That's what Josh Hart actually brought to New York's championship season. And to complete the trio, Mikal Bridges brings a completely different statistical profile to this roster than Brunson or Hart. And once you look at the full numbers, you can see exactly why New York valued him so highly. During the 2025-26 season, Bridges averaged 14.4 points, 3.8 rebounds, and 3.7 assists a game. He shot 49% from the field, 37.1% from three, and 82.7% from the free throw line. On top of that, he added 1.3 steals and 0.8 blocks a night, and his true shooting percentage landed at 58.7%. That's an incredibly efficient scoring profile for a guy who isn't asked to dominate the ball. What makes those numbers even more interesting is the context behind them. Bridges attempted threes on roughly 44% of his total field goal attempts, which tells you he's built to space the floor around Brunson. When Brunson attacks and forces the defense to collapse, Bridges is standing out there ready to punish anybody who helps off him. That 37.1% clip from deep means defenses genuinely can't afford to ignore him, even for a second. His assist number is worth pausing on too. 3.7 assists a game means he's not just a stand and shoot wing waiting in the corner. He can catch the ball, read the defense, and make a play himself. If a defender closes out hard on him, he can attack right off that closeout. If the defense rotates behind him, he can find the open man. That gives New York a second decision maker on the floor who isn't named Brunson. And that matters a ton when defenses are scheming, specifically to take the ball out of Brunson's hand. Now here's something people tend to forget about Bridges, and it's a huge piece of understanding his role. Before he ever got to New York, he was a legitimate high-volume scorer. After he got traded from Phoenix to Brooklyn, partway through a season, he averaged 26.1 points a game over his final 27 games that year. The following season, he averaged 19.6 points a game. So when people look at his 14.4 scoring average with the Knicks and assume That's just who he is as a player. That's not the full picture. That drop wasn't about declining ability, it was about role redistribution once he landed next to Brunson and Town. And that trade to get him wasn't cheap either. New York gave up 5 first-round picks to acquire Bridges from Brooklyn back in June of 2024. 5 first-round picks is an enormous price for any player, and it tells you exactly how much value the front office placed on his specific combination of skills. They weren't paying for a guy who needed to score 25 a night. They were paying for a two-way wing who could defend, shoot, and fit seamlessly next to their other stars. Let's talk defense now, because this is where Bridges separates himself even further. He's listed at around 6'6", which gives him legitimate size to guard multiple positions. He's capable of checking point guards, shooting guards, wings, and bigger perimeter scorers depending on what the matchup calls for. His length lets him contest shots and disrupt passing lanes at a high level. And this reputation didn't just start in New York either. Earlier in his career, Bridges finished as the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year during the 2021-22 season, and he's also picked up an all-defensive team selection along the way. That defensive versatility becomes even more valuable when you consider how many offensive weapons the Knicks already have on the floor. When you're running out Brunson, Towns, Anunoby, and Hart alongside Bridges, you need at least a couple of those guys who can lock in defensively without the offense collapsing. Bridges fills exactly that need. He gives New York a legitimate stopper who doesn't sacrifice spacing, since his three-point shooting keeps him a threat even when he's out there primarily to defend. His steals numbers back up that defensive impact too. He averaged 1.3 steals a game during the regular season. That's not just about staying in front of his assignment, that's active hands disrupting passing lanes and creating instant transition chances. And transition offense is incredibly valuable for a team like New York, since it takes pressure off the half-court sets that defenses spend so much time scheming against. Now let's get into how this all showed up during the actual playoff run, because the numbers tell a great story here. Against Cleveland in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, Bridges dropped 22 points on 11 for 15 shooting, while adding 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 blocks, and 3 steals. That's a complete two-way stat line in a single game, scoring efficiently while also generating turnovers and protecting the rim. In Game 1 of that same series, he posted 18 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 2 steals in 42 minutes. So across those Eastern Conference Finals games, you're seeing him swing between primary scoring threat and lockdown defender, depending on what New York needed that night. Then, in the actual finals against San Antonio, his numbers shifted from game to game in a way that really shows off his adaptability. In Game 2, he scored 20 points on 8 for 13 shooting, including 4 for 6 from 3, while adding 6 rebounds and 6 assists in 41 minutes. That's an incredibly efficient scoring performance paired with real playmaking numbers. Game 3 of the finals looked completely different. He scored 9 points, grabbed 3 rebounds, dished 3 assists, and picked up 2 steals in 28 minutes. Lower scoring output, sure, but he was still contributing across multiple categories and staying active defensively. Then in the championship clinching Game 5, Bridges played 39 minutes and finished with 14 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and a block, shooting 5 for 10 from the field and 3 for 7 from 3. That's a guy who stayed on the floor for nearly 40 minutes in the biggest game of the season, because his game translates no matter what role the moment required. Here's a number that really puts his overall playoff impact into perspective. Across the 2026 playoffs, Bridges averaged a plus 10.3 plus minus per game. League-wide, only 6 players averaged a positive double-digit plus minus during that playoff run, and 4 of those 6 were Knicks, Towns, Brunson, Hart, and Bridges. 4 out of 6 players from the Almaba. Same roster hitting that mark tells you just how balanced and connected this Knicks team actually was during their championship push. Now let's talk about durability, because this is honestly one of the most underrated parts of his profile. When the Knicks acquired him, it was noted that Bridges had played every single game in college, and then every one of his first 556 NBA games. 556 consecutive games to start a career is an absurd number. That kind of availability record was one of the specific things New York valued when they made that trade, and it speaks to just how reliable he's been throughout his career. Under the new coaching staff this past season, his workload actually got trimmed a bit for the sake of long-term health. His combined regular season and playoff minutes dropped from around 3,742 in the 2024-2025 season, down to 3,300 in the 2025-26 season. That's a reduction of 442 minutes, even though the team played deep into the postseason. That's the front office managing his workload smartly, preserving him for when it mattered most instead of grinding him down across an entire regular season. Now let's get into the contract, because this is a massive part of the roster building story. Back in August of 2025, Bridges signed a 4-year extension worth $150 million with New York, including a player option for the 2029-30 season. Breaking down that contract year by year, he's set to earn approximately $33.48 million in 2026-27, $36.16 million in 2027-28, $38.84 million in 2028-29, and then a $41.52 million player option for 2029-30. And here's the important part. He actually left money on the table to make that deal happen. Reports indicated he could have landed somewhere around $156 million, or potentially even more, by simply waiting until his contract expired naturally. Instead, he agreed to the 4-year, $150 million extension specifically to help the front office maintain flexibility around the rest of the championship roster. That decision carries extra weight because of who he made it alongside. He chose to take less money specifically to lock in his future, next to his former VillaNova teammates, Brunson and Hart. That's not just a basketball story anymore. That's a financial commitment tying these 3 guys together on paper, not just in spirit. Speaking of VillaNova, let's run through that history one more time, because it's central to who Bridges is as a player. He, Brunson, and Hart won the 2016 NCAA championship together as college teammates. Brunson and Bridges then won a second NCAA title together in 2018 after Hart had already moved on. Years later, all 3 reunited in New York and won the 2026 NBA championship together, becoming the first trio of teammates ever to win both an NCAA championship and an NBA championship as teammates. Even back at VillaNova, the roles mirrored what we see today. Brunson ran the offense as the primary creator. Hart provided physicality and rebounding. Bridges developed into the long, versatile 2-way wing. That exact same division of labor carried directly into their time with the Knicks, which is a pretty remarkable thing to see play out over a full decade. Bridges also brings something that a lot of shooters simply don't have, and that's the ability to attack off the dribble once a defender runs him off the 3-point line. Instead of just passing the ball back out when a closeout comes flying at him, he can put the ball on the floor and create his own shot, or draw help and kick it to a teammate. That turns his outside shooting into more than just a standstill threat. It becomes the starting point of an entire secondary action. His length also helps him finish over smaller defenders whenever teams try to switch a smaller guard onto him. And when a bigger, longer wing gets thrown his way instead, he can lean on his movement and shooting to create separation. That kind of 2-way matchup flexibility makes him incredibly difficult for opposing coaches to plan around. When you put Bridges next to OG Anunoby, New York suddenly has 2 long, physical wing defenders on the floor at the same time. That combination takes an enormous amount of defensive pressure off both Brunson and Towns, since neither of them has to spend their energy chasing around the other team's best perimeter score. So when you add everything up, 14.4 points, 3.8 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 49% shooting from the field, 37.1% from 3, 82.7% from the free throw line, 1.3 steals, 0.8 blocks, a plus 10.3 playoff plus minus, a $150 million extension, and a championship won directly alongside his former VillaNova teammates, that's the complete statistical case for Mikal Bridges as one of the most valuable 2-way pieces on this entire Knicks roster. If you guys enjoyed this, I'll be posting every day. I genuinely appreciate if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.